हेलो। हाय। ओके। एफओएमसी का रिजल्ट आ चुका है और मार्केट शार्प ऑफ मूव अपसाइड मूव। मार्केट शार्प ऑफ मूव। हाँ, एफओएमसी का रिजल्ट आ चुका है, मार्केट शार्प अपसाइड मूव दे चुका है ऑलरेडी। मैंने गोल्ड पे हाँ ट्रेड एक बुक कर लिया था ऑलरेडी। ठीक है, यहाँ पे मेरा एंट्री था, यहाँ पे मेरा वो था विजिट एंड ओके। अभी मैं आपको शो करता हूँ। अभी मैं नाश्ते पे एक ट्रेड ले रहा हूँ, वो मतलब एक हो गया एग्जीक्यूट। ये देखो आप, ये है US30 पे, नाश्ते पे। मुझे शायद इसको बुक कर लेना चाहिए इस ट्रेड को। आई थिंक आई शुड होल्ड द ट्रेड। चलो देखते क्या होता है। भाई, ओके, एफओएमसी का ट्रेड न्यूज़ आ चुका है। मैंने यहाँ पे एक ट्रेड ले चुका हूँ ऑलरेडी, और चलो देखते क्या होता है अभी। हाँ, गोल्ड में मैंने ट्रेड लिया था, गोल्ड का मैंने यहाँ पे टारगेट भी मैंने अचीव कर लिया हो। और पहले से अंदाजा था कि हाँ मार्केट ऊपर जाएगा, मार्केट पॉजिटिव न्यूज़ आया, पहले से अंदाजा था। अंदाजा तो पहले से था, आइडिया पहले से था, क्योंकि फॉरेस्ट फैक्ट्री में हम देख सकते थे कि अनुमान किया जा रहा था कि ये प्राइस ऊपर जाएगा। मार्केट ओपन होते ही क्या क्या मूव दिया है, और ये मैं मूव पकड़ने में कामयाब हो चुका हूँ। और अच्छा था। ओके, अभी यहाँ पे एक मैं इसका लॉजिक बताता हूँ, ठीक है। यहाँ पे एक रेजिस्टेंस था, मैं पहले मार्क करके रखा था, ये जो रेजिस्टेंस था बहुत दिनों से रेजिस्टेंस था एक। और इस रेजिस्टेंस को आज लंदन मार्केट पे भी इसको रिस्पेक्ट किया था। आज या कल, हाँ आज, आज 29, आज। और शिव शाम को भी इसको एक मैं उसका बोल रहा हूँ, मैं गोल्ड का बता रहा हूँ, ठीक है। गोल्ड का इसका मैं बता रहा हूँ, मैं XAUUSD का बता रहा हूँ इसका। तो शायद शाम को भी इसका एक यहाँ से रिजेक्शन लिया था। ये जो सेलिंग पॉइंट था ये वाला, अराउंड 4050 यहाँ से जहाँ तक बाइंग बाय का बनता था एक, मैंने लिया नहीं इसका। और न्यूज़ आते ही मुझे पता है कि न्यूज़ आते ही एक अच्छा मूव दे सकता है, और जैसे कि अनुमान था बासे वैसे एक अच्छा मूव दिया है। और ये पकड़ने में कामयाब हो चुका हूँ। और 70 पॉइंट, अराउंड कितना पॉइंट, 25, अराउंड 50 पिप्स मैं पकड़ चुका। और इसमें मैं अभी ट्रेड शायद मैं क्लोज कर देता हूँ। अभी फिर से साइडिस हो जाएगा क्योंकि ओवरऑल मार्केट है डाउन ट्रेंड में, ठीक है। मैं इसको भी क्लोज कर देता हूँ, ज़्यादा नहीं, बहुत कम अमाउंट है इसका, है क्लोज कर दिया, ठीक है। सो ओके, अगर आप लोगों को क्वेश्चन है आप पूछ सकते हो मुझे कमेंट पे, मैं आपको बताओ लाइक आंसर देने की मैं कोशिश करूँगा। मार्केट ने अच्छा मूव दिया, मार्केट ओपन होते ही 11:30 को मैं आपको अभी न्यूज़ सुनाता हूँ FOMC का, जो मैं ब्रॉडकास्ट में आपको सुनाता हूँ। थंबनेल और मैं देने का टाइम भी नहीं मिला मुझे। थंबनेल और लाइक थंबनेल और लाइक क्या क्या बोलते हैं, थंबनेल और टाइटल मुझे देने का टाइम ही नहीं मिला, इतना जोर से लाइक इतना फास्ट आया था, फास्ट मूव हुआ था, तो मुझे लाइव आना था। मैं फटाफट जितना हो सके इतना जल्दी मैंने लाइव आ चुका हूँ, ताकि मैं आप लोगों को अपडेट कर पाऊँ क्या होता है। गोल्ड पे मैंने यहाँ पे लिमिट ऑर्डर लिया था, तो चलो मैं आपको ये लाइक प्ले करता हूँ।
ongoing forward guidance? Won't the markets have more volatility, and shouldn't Americans have more access into what you're thinking going forward?
So I think financial markets perform best when they react to incoming data. I think the financial markets work less efficiently when they ask a question, how will the Federal Reserve react to that incoming information? The more that markets are paying attention to what's happening in the real economy, deciding what's good data and what's less good data, the more financial markets can price what they believe is the most likely and what are the tail risks. Financial market prices are probably the most important source of information to guide central bankers. But when all the financial markets are doing is reflecting back what we've said, then we're taking the most important source of information and we're being blind to it. I'd like us to create a system where those blinders come off, where markets are following data that they efficiently think is reliable, and they'll be watching data, we'll be watching data, they'll come with better information through market prices to us, we can make more informed decisions, with ultimately the goal that I said at the outset, deliver on the price stability objective that Congress told us to do, and that we've got to get in the business of doing.
Yeah, if I could take you in the meeting a little bit. This is your first meeting. The board members seem fairly hawkish when you listen to, in general, when you listen to what they're saying. Was there any discussion of a rate cut going forward today?
There was one proposal on the table. There was no discussion of any other proposals. The discussion on that proposal, I would say, was quite limited. The group was unanimous and unambiguous on it. It has been the practice of this central bank and others to have a range of alternatives. Today we had one. I thought it furthered discussion, deepened it, and made it clear what we needed to do and how we needed to deliver. I wouldn't prejudge what happens in the future, but there was only one big subject for us. We took it on. We had a good family fight on it for a couple of days, and we ended up, I think, in a better place.
Claire.
Thanks a lot, Claire Jones, Financial Times. Coming to this blind, reading this very nice short statement that I think we've all appreciated in the room, one might wonder why you didn't raise rates today, considering what you're saying here about the risks to US inflation and your mandate. I guess, why not, and what would you need to see in order to get to that place? And secondly, on your task forces, are there any best practices at other central banks that you'd consider looking at? Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad they're in the practice of giving you two questions, because my answer to your first question was going to be very curt. I've got nothing more to say than the statement itself. And to the point of the question I got before, market reactions to what we say unfiltered, I think, is more helpful than having delivered a statement at me than improvising further upon it. Best practices of task forces. This is a subject I've thought some about. I've been on a task force or two in my life. Best practice, find the best minds.
All it takes is one day with Rapid. Pick Rapid Daily. Pass in one day, get payouts every day after. Pick Rapid Pro. Pass in one day, no buffer, get payouts.
He's in it too. That's why we're looking for, haven't done the final roll call, some of the most significant talent we have in the building and across the reserve banks on each of these, and in some sense seconding them to this group for a period of some number of months, so that the leaders of the task force know what the most analytical central bank in the world thinks about that. They can reflect on it, and a final best practice, we're not outsourcing decisions to anybody. Administrations past and present, reserve banks have chosen a group of 19 people around the table. These will be our decisions. We can agree to some of the recommendations, disagree with others, have a good family fight about it. But what comes from them will, I hope and believe, make the discussion we have internally better, stronger, more of a dialectic, so that we can finally deliver on that price stability objective.
Just a quick follow-up on your markets point. If you look at 2-year yields, they're really suggesting that markets think more tightening is needed. Would that be your read on what the 2-year yield is saying as well?
We were in such a good place. This is why we don't do third questions, I presume. I'm not going to offer any commentary on market reaction over the last 30 or 60 minutes. What we've given markets is a new chapter for the central bank, some fresh thinking. What we've given markets and households and businesses, I think, is a commitment to ask ourselves hard questions such that we can deliver on the promises that we've made before. This is a lot of change for financial markets to digest. I wouldn't be particularly intrigued by how they react in the first several minutes or even first several days. What I think is most important is that financial markets, and at least as important, households and businesses know that this central bank will deliver on price stability.
Hi there, Chairman Warsh. Brian Chung with NBC News. Thank you for taking our questions. So when you say that we've dropped forward guidance for the layperson, that might sound like the Fed's going to say less or offer less insight into where their borrowing costs might go. So for the person that maybe you might run into at the grocery store, where the price tags are rising at a faster pace than their wages at the moment, how would you explain it to them? I don't know if task force might be the answer there, but how would you kind of communicate this era, this chapter of the Fed?
If I told somebody in the milk aisle that I had a task force for that, I think that would be doing a very poor job, so I appreciate it. If I saw somebody in the grocery store, what I would say to them is that we cannot have a very significant effect on particular prices. The price of oil in the markets today, or even the price of a dozen eggs, that does not have first order consequences to what we're doing. But we do have a really important job there. And it's to make sure that those changes in oil or beef or eggs or milk don't broaden in the economy, don't have second and third order effects. That's our job, that's our commitment, that's our capability, and we're going to deliver on it.
And then is the Fed's relationship with the Treasury also under review? There was the normal breakfast meetings with the Treasury Secretary. Is that something you intend to continue doing? And have you had conversations with the President since you're swearing in?
So on the President, I don't have anything for you. With respect to the Treasury Secretary, he has been posting pictures of our breakfast, so I don't think I can deny that. The long tradition at the central bank is that the Fed Chairman and the Treasury Secretary meet weekly. I think we've pulled off 3 of those so far. I believe he's overseas this week, so this will be the exception to the rule. I think they're very useful discussions. The central bank's objectives and our roles and responsibilities are quite delineated from the fiscal authorities. And in my view, monetary policy is independent in the conduct of what we do. But that doesn't mean we're not interested in what's happening with the fiscal authorities. The way I think about it is this central bank needs to have a wide lens, but a narrow remit. We need to be quite interested.
यहाँ पे अभी मार्केट में कोई न्यूज़ है नहीं अभी यहाँ पे, ठीक है। अभी जो फेडरल रेट है अभी चेंज नहीं हुआ फिलहाल के लिए, तो सेम रहेगा, इसलिए अभी मार्केट ऊपर है और सेम रहेगा और ज़्यादा कुछ है नहीं अपडेट, इसलिए नास्टेक और US30 फिर से अभी नीचे आने लगा है। लाइक कोई गुड न्यूज़ ज़्यादा कुछ है नहीं।
Ingenuity. That doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. That certainly doesn't mean it's not going to be disruptive. But over the long term, my conviction and I heard quite a bit of support for this around the committee today, is the United States is a winner as we go down this. The United States is ultimately going to be better off in that. Now, to bring that back to the conduct of policy, timing, scale, speed, implications for output and employment, it's one of the things we have a task force to do.
If you don't mind, a follow-up from the other side, which is that when you look at the strong job growth that's out there, the elevated inflation, GDP seems to be going pretty good, and the stock market seems to be soaring. Do you look around this economy and see the funds rate being restrictive?
So that's your second question. I'm going to give the same answer that I gave before. I'd say as I think about the conduct of policy, what matters is what's the effect of policy. Not what do we say, but what happens. And the best way I can describe it is it's uneven. I do see some restrictiveness in things like housing. It's hard to use those same words anywhere else. I'll just make one other point. You talked about one of our dual mandates on the employment side. I don't believe that we have a cruel choice. I don't share the view that was expressed a few generations ago that Federal Reserve chairmen show up at a podium like this and say, you got to choose. And you're going to have to decide whether you're willing to tolerate higher inflation to put more people at work. I don't believe in that. What I believe is if we do our job, we can make strong growth, low prices, and strong employment mutually compatible. And so what you heard from the committee today is we've got some work to do on the price stability front.
Nick.
Thank you. Nick Timmeros with the Wall Street Journal. Chairman Warsh, you've said repeatedly credibility is earned by delivering. If credibility requires delivering, the move would be to tighten, or at least to threaten to. Now, you didn't do that today. Why not?
That judgment you expressed was not expressed by any of the 19 people around the table. We'll be meeting in 6 weeks, and we'll take up the issue again.
And if I could ask about AI, the build-out is generating enormous demand right now, CapEx, data centers, power. The productivity payoff may be further out. So in your judgment today, is AI adding more to demand or to supply?
It's a good question. At the central bank in an economics profession, what we spend most of our time doing is counting demand. It's easier. We can see it, we can count it, we can.
This is the type of faceless animated videos that helped us grow our channel 10 times in 2025.
You'll notice in the second paragraph of what one of your colleagues described as a very short statement, we have a sentence on the demand side and a sentence about the same length on the supply side. They're both important. Just because we can count one better than the other doesn't mean we're going to favor one more than the other. With respect to AI and the growth of data centers and infrastructure around it, we're counting the demand side, and it is no doubt showing up in GDP figures. We can be less certain when we infer the timing and extent of the growth in the supply side. It may well be an intuition the supply side is going to expand, but it'll take longer. I just describe it this way. There's a race between supply and demand. Milton Friedman says that the only thing we know about economics is that there's a supply line and a demand line they ultimately cross. When they cross and what are the implications for policy? The good news for you is we have a task force for that.
Andrew.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It sounded like on the task force on data that you were looking at overhauling or completely overhauling the system of national accounts, the way the government mines the economy. Is that your ambition?
In a word, no. In a few words, much of this data gathering happens in other government agencies to which we owe a tremendous amount of respect, tremendous amount of deference. But if in the course of this we come up with recommendations, which Fed staff have already begun to develop, about things that they could be doing to help inform us as policymakers, we're not going to hesitate. Again, I don't want to try to delineate the four corners of the research of the task force on data, but I do think there will be a review of official statistics, and at least as important, a view of bringing the best practices from the private sector and new analytical tools made possible by AI, so we can forge these into a fabric that gives us better real-time information. So as I mentioned before, when we're making decisions that we'd say are real contemporaneous data, not data that we call contemporaneous, that's really an echo of history.
Okay, thanks. The other question I wanted to ask is related to the building renovations. Are you considering any changes to the renovations, the projects, just in light of the fact that they became kind of a political football in the last year?
I heard something about that. I don't think I'm breaking any news, but my view, when you show up at a new institution, you should go meet with the Inspector General, just as a matter of good practice. It's a practice that I hope to continue. I've had one meeting with the Inspector General, and he told me what I believe the world knows, which he'll be coming out with a report on the building and the building projects at some point later this summer. I'll be interested in reading the report. From my perspective, with a forward-looking glance, is there anything that we can be doing or should be doing from this moment until the completion of the project to do what we can to be good stewards of taxpayer money and make sure that we're delivering on the promises that we made? Some more work to do. You might not be surprised in the first few weeks. I've been somewhat preoccupied on other matters, but I promised to get to the full breadth of the Fed's tasks in the weeks ahead.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. So I know that you did not submit a forecast, but you are the person who is authorized to speak on behalf of the FOMC. So I'm wondering if you could tell us in the SEP, the increase in the expectations for inflation, is that all because of the Iran war? What was the discussion around the expectations for inflation being higher and also potentially growth being slower?
So my read of what I heard in the room reflected, I must admit, in the SEPs, is half of my colleagues thought the policy rate, given all those developments, should be at this level or lower between now and year end, and the other half thought higher. That 19th voter was me, and I didn't submit one. There's a range of views on the questions of